23. We're so glad everyone is here today. We're going to start with the business portion of the meeting, which most of the focus is going to be on the legislative proposals that the Judicial Council took from the very good work of this commission, and we're going to talk a little bit about where they are and summarize them for everyone here. You should have a copy of a meeting notebook, and looks like this. And that will hopefully help you keep up with the agenda. If you don't have one, let us know. I would like to extend a welcome to one of our new commissioners, Chandra Carter, down here. She was named the executive director of the Texas Juvenile Justice Department in December. She served as the interim executive director since April, and used to be the deputy director for state services. She is going to be a really wonderful resource and ally for this commission because she has extensive decades-long experience in trauma-informed care and programming, and in particular has worked on programs that serve victims of child sex trafficking. And she has a bachelor's in psychology and law, societies and justice, and a master's in social work. So welcome, Chandra. And we have now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague and good friend, Justice Rebecca Huddle, who's going to talk to us a little bit about our new collaborative council members that are here today.
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. So before we get to new collaborative council members, I want to welcome Cynthia Martinez. Cynthia, would you raise your hand? Hello, this is Cynthia Martinez. She joined us a few weeks ago as the new JCMH legal assistant. Cynthia, to give you a bit about her, has 26 years experience as a paralegal. We are expecting great things and we're looking forward to having her on. Before she came to JCMH, she had private industry experience with Dell and Epicor, and also public sector work at the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement and HHSC. So welcome, Cynthia. We're glad to have you. And now on to collaborative council members. We're excited to have this group of professionals on board. The council is a tremendous asset, of course, to the commission. It helps share information on issues with various groups. And so we're delighted to have you on board. After I introduce you, I'm going to give just a blurb about who you are and what your experience is. And if you would take just 30 or 60 seconds to say a word to fill in some context about who you are and what we can expect to hear from you and what your background is, that'd be terrific. So let's start with Judge Mike Smith. Judge Mike Smith is the judge of the 35th District Court, serving Brown and Mills counties. The judge with us here? Not yet. Not yet. We'll hear from him later. Yolanda Lewis is the Executive Vice President for Justice and Health and also the Executive Director at the Center for Justice and Health at the Meadows Mental Health Policy Institute. Okay. Thomas Wilson, Assistant District Attorney in Smith County. Rosie Medina, the Chief Juvenile Probation Officer for El Paso County.
There she is.
Wonderful, yay. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning. I am Chief Juvenile Probation Officer in El Paso County. I worked for El Paso County for the last 10 years. But I'm proudly a 24-year veteran working in the specialty court arena, in particular with juvenile drug courts, and I also designed and implemented our first juvenile mental health court in El Paso County, which I am very proud to say is the most successful program we have in our department. And I'm honored and delighted not just represent El Paso, but to contribute to it.
We're delighted to have you, and it's always extra special for me personally to welcome another El Paso, fellow El Paso. Officer Sean Edwards is the Master Peace Officer in Belton, Texas, as well as the Regional Director for the Texas CIT Association and Regional Director for the Law Enforcement Peer Network. Officer Edwards, welcome.
Hi, it's just Sean. I've got over 26 years of law enforcement experience. Started my mental health career in 2006 and a strong advocate to help individuals suffering from mental health crisis get them diverted from our criminal justice system. And it's an honor to be here with you guys today.
We're delighted to have you. Welcome. Kathy Johnston is a rural health specialist for the Texas Department of Agriculture. And last but not least, Simone Saloom is a policy attorney for the Texas Health and Human Services Commission. Okay, well, we welcome and are grateful to all of the new collaborative council members. Look forward to your meeting. Next, in tab 1, I want to point to tab 1, you'll find the agenda for our meeting. You see our lunch break is scheduled for about 11:45. We're going to try to stay on schedule, but we may make a couple of minor changes depending on how the conversation unfolds this morning. But feel free to take breaks as needed before the lunch break. For the end of the meeting, we'll have some time for announcements from commissioners and collaborative council members, but we won't have time for everyone to add the comments today. And so if you have something you would like to contribute, please go to the table out front and ask for an announcement card so that that's how we will know to recognize you and that you have something to contribute during announcements. With that, I'll ask Christy Taylor, our Executive Director, to present her commission report.
Thank you, Justice Huddle. Good morning, everyone. It's great to see you all in person. I apologize I wasn't at the last meeting. I was ill, and I know it's all been going around, so I'm glad to be here today. If you'll turn to tab 4, this is our report to the commission. We update you all on all of the projects and committees and invite you to look at those committees and see if it is something that you would like to join. We ask you all as commissioners and collaborative councils to join one committee at least. And so this is a great opportunity to find out more about those committees, ask the chairs. Later we'll have the chair report, so you can ask the chairs about what kind of work they do. And we know most of you have already been involved in many committees. We also ask that we have updated information from all of our commissioners and collaborative council. You all are busy people and you're movers and shakers, and you change ranks and get lots of promotions. So please make sure we are getting in touch with you with the right information. And I wanted to also let you know that the Long-Term Planning Committee met and talked about our strategic plan, and they also talked about what policy priorities we should have for the next year. So some of that information included, we want to focus on grant writing. We want to focus on sharing best practices from both rural and urban sites and make those easily accessible for other counties. We want to talk a lot about mental health courts, how to build them, how to sustain them, what the best practices are. And we want to focus on what data courts should be collecting and how to do that. So these were some of the ideas that we heard from you all in that meeting. And I hope that you will see that we are responsive to your feedback and requests as you listen to the meeting today, because several of those themes are being developed in our work for the next year. Another strong interest, of course, is our legislative work. We have started that work, as you know, a year ago, more than a year ago, breaking into committees, looking at current mental health laws. And now we hope to serve as a resource on the 11 proposals that were developed in our committees, and then a group of juvenile law proposals that were developed by another group, but that we felt were appropriate to adopt through that process. So last session, we were able to have 10 of our proposals make their way into law. And so we look forward to this next session. And now I will ask Judge Spisha to give his report on the strategic plan.
Okay, thank you, Christy. I don't know if we have.
There are
one, right?
microphones in the ceiling.
Okay, well, I normally don't have a problem being picked up by microphones. Good morning and Happy New Year. The strategic plan was revised in May 2022 when the long-term planning committee met to create an updated plan. We had a day-long meeting facilitated by Dr. Charles Mathis at the University of Texas. It was very productive. The long-term planning committee recommended that we keep the underlying tenets of collaboration and leadership and added a new vision statement and overarching principles. The new draft also including a section on organizational administration and evaluation. A copy of the revised plan will be emailed to you in the next week. There will be a comment period for commissioners, and then barring any significant objections that we can't overcome, the plan will be approved after the comment period. Thank you, everyone, and I now ask Willett Sedgwick, JCMH accountant, to take us through the budget.
Just 1 second on the strategic plan. If you have comments, we're very interested in getting those and would like them by the end of February. So we'll send the draft to you all. And if you have comments, please send them back. And then barring any objection, it'll be approved at the end of the comment period, with obviously taking into consideration anything that we get from you guys. So.
Yeah, our first strategic plan, you all made great improvements to. And so we look forward to those comments, and we will discuss it with you as they come in. And hopefully we'll get that approved by March.
Thank you, Judge Spisha. The budget can be found under tab 5. The purpose of this document is to provide how the JCMH funds are being used. The first table shows the amount of funding the JCMH has appropriated for the 2022-2023 biennium, which the amount would be 2.5 million. The second table represents the approved fiscal year for 2023 budget and actual expenditures to date. In 2021, the commissioners were surveyed to rate the effectiveness of the commission's budget. Based on those results, we have reduced the number of grants to 2. The Innovation Map and the Community Diversion Coordinator Pilot Program evaluation. Both support projects received high rankings. We have also allocated additional funding to the Judicial Summit and on mental health and commission directed projects. Finally, the last table represents our funds balance today. We are currently waiting on the final invoice for the 2022 summit, but anticipate carrying forward $60,000 from fiscal year 2022, leaving about $30,000 unallocated for 2023. Thank you. Rose McBride is up next. So thank you for sharing.
Hang on 1 second. Anybody have any questions? Okay.
Okay, hi.
Thank you, Willa.
Thank you a lot. So we have received some media attention lately, which is very exciting. We were featured in the Texas Bar Journal's November issue. KXAN, which is here in Austin, covered the HHSC Regional Eliminate the Wait Forum that we had in December. KXAN also interviewed Christy about some diversion options this past January, and that article was released that same day, so it's up now. This month, the Dallas Morning News also published an article about our commission, our pilot programs and publications. And in February, KVU is going to publish, which is here in Austin as well, will publish a story where they interviewed Christy about Eliminate the Wait, our legislative proposals and our overall mission. So some very exciting attention that we're getting. And you can see all of these stories that are out right now under news and then JCMH in the news on our website. And I am going to share some data with you about our social media metrics from the past year. So from the beginning of 2022 until I looked at it in beginning of January, so year over year, I wanted to see kind of what content people are interested in and what kind of growth our social media channels are getting. We started our LinkedIn and Facebook at the beginning of 2022 and had a Twitter for a while. We also have a new Instagram account, which if you look on the back of your meeting notebook, there's a QR code that you can follow that account as well. And that one is kind of just starting up, so be patient with me on that one. But if you take a look from January until December, we've really grown our following, especially on LinkedIn. And this big jump here in November is when we had the summit and we were putting out a lot of content for that. So a lot of people found us through our posts from the summit and are now following. So it's very exciting. And this is from end of December. So since then, we have jumped up and we have over 500 on LinkedIn, which is very exciting. And just to give you an idea of kind of the content that people are interested in, it kind of varies platform to platform, but people are interested in just different things. I post about different news articles, things that are going on in different communities. So like this one was very popular and it was about a mobile crisis outreach team in Houston where they interviewed our Commissioner Wayne Young, and people really enjoyed that. Some summit posts. And this is an event we had in Denton County, welcoming people to the Collaborative Council. And this one's about Eliminate the Wait and a roundtable we had with the Children's Commission. So just a little bit of varied things that people are interested in different platforms, but all really positive stuff that people are really finding out about us through social media. And also, you probably saw the top 10 summit takeaways from our most recent Jurist in Residence letter. And of course, we had to have a video to go with it. So I will plug that in and play it for you now. Okay. Hold on, just make sure. Bring a little bit of audio. So sorry. Give me just a moment. Okay, I'm sorry. I worked this morning. I will work on this, but for now we can play it again during Judge Carr's portion where I'm going to talk about the summit a little bit. So I'll turn things over to Judge Dave Jan, who's going to be reporting on a recent roundtable event that we had.
Thank you. In December, we held a roundtable discussion down here in Austin that I believe was at the Hospital Association's building. If I recall where it was, I know it was not in here. And we covered the complex issues in emergency detention. For those not familiar with the emergency detention process, it's a temporary action that holds a person for preliminary examination and crisis stabilization. We examined the intended processes through the Health and Safety Code and then heard about the reality on the ground from over 35 stakeholders who attended. There were judges from all levels of judiciary, municipal, justice of peace, county level, county court judges, district court judges, and medical professionals, attorneys, law enforcement officers, hospitals, the Hospital Association, and leaders from state agencies such as the Health and Human Services Commission. We also had the head of the Texas Association of Counties there as well. As we planned the event, it became very clear that with 254 counties in Texas, there are at least 254 different ways to handle emergency detention. For an educational and productive session. We appreciated the time and the contributions of the attendees that came down. I believe this was right smack in the middle of December, about the 14th, 19th in there. So in addition to getting ready for Christmas, getting out of school, it was a hectic time. We really appreciated the number of folks that came down and attended. We learned a lot about the emergency detention process across the state, the The staff of JCMH is working on the final report for that. It should be out fairly soon, I believe. So with that, I'm going to turn you over to Kim Harris, who will update you on the commission's technical assistance activities.
Thanks, Judge Stan. If you'll turn to tab 7 in your meeting number, you'll find the JCMH technical assistance overview document. So in 2022, we began our technical assistance work. We had 22 requests come in from across the state. And you can see a breakdown on this page of the different types of technical assistance that were requested and fulfilled. All in all, we ended up working with 33 different counties to fulfill those requests. Last commission meeting, this was able to give you an update on our pilot projects and sim mapping and the innovations website. And so I'll just add that the other areas of technical assistance that really took off were our requests for regional mental health training and support. We were able to directly assist rural counties east of Harris County, some in the McLennan and surrounding counties, South Texas counties, with their legal processes and information, and help specifically with the issues affecting their counties. Next week, we're going out to the Vernon, Llano, Blanco region. And we're gonna talk to them about their systems.
I've heard it both ways.
Which one is it?
No, I really, you can say it either way. You're fine.
I'm gonna turn it over to Judge Clark for the summer report.
Well, I'm really surprised. Good morning. I'm surprised to be given the summer report today because after the reception on the first night of the thing, I fell ill and I missed the rest of the conference. So I want to thank, I went to Florida with Christy also, and I came back with COVID. There's a connection here somewhere. I don't know, I'm missing it. But I want to thank Judge DuBose for stepping in for me at the conference. It was very well received. We're to the point now where we're starting to have a reputation. We've been in business that long. And the reputation is that we are seen not just in Texas, but across the country more and more as being very innovative and trying to take this bull by the horns and make some progress in the area of mental health. Not perfect, but we're working and we still have some miles to go. Summit Committee can rest easy for a little while. We'll get back to work in probably a month or two. I will have requests for proposals sent out. If you wish to participate on the committee, because we're always looking for our next batch of good speakers, we welcome you to make your desire known. We will certainly include you in the participation. We did make substantial progress on our top 10 learning points, our takeaways, and they are summarized in Judge Specia's last Jurist in Residence newsletter for your review. And I'll have a little bit more to say when we get to legislation, but for the time being, I'm glad you all had a great session. I wish I could have been there, but I was close. I was sick in a room nearby.
I think you snuck off to the water park.
Right.
That's exactly what it was. And at this time, I will turn it over to Judge DuBose.
And Judge DuBose is stepping talking today, so we'll need, but I think we're gonna watch.
I think we're gonna, hopefully it's gonna, audio.
There it is.
Okay. Hold on, share it for our friends on Zoom real quick.
We are grateful to the State Bar for this new setup, but it is new to us. They have revamped the whole room to work with Zoom.
Violence is not a mental illness. And it's extremely important that any discussion you have about mental illness and violence begin with that statement being said unambiguously and clearly, because for centuries, people have equated mental illness with violence. Violence is a human condition. One of the things when we look at all violence is there's really no statistical association between mental illness and violence.
Your childhood biography will determine your adult biology. What that does to the brain is when a child is loved in a healthy way, the brain perceives itself as lovable.
You don't have to wait for crisis. I've sometimes compared it to a train going down the tracks and, the bridge is out. So what are we going to do? Radio the engineer or park ambulances at the bottom of the ravine? I think we need to intervene early in order to make sure that someone has the opportunity to recover.
Without question, AOT saved my life. You are heroes with the power to create progress, and I thank all of you for generously sharing your time today to learn from this valuable judicial summit.
When you start looking at the individual as a person and not a case on your docket, and thinking about a personalized approach, a person-centered approach to coming up with a reasonable solution for each individual person, that's how these less restrictive alternatives really come into play.
The shame of mental illness is what brings the stigma to have any bearing at all. But the antidote to that is education and understanding that these are differences that are happening around how people are processing, understanding, and living their life. And that's not wrong. It just needs an embrace.
JCMH created a diversion ideas for every budget, and it goes through the intercepts. It's color blocked by the intercepts, and it's supposed to lay out, if you hear about this type of program and you think, that's for the fair counties of the world, we tried to put another column called informal diversion programs, where you could do kind of a dupe. You can do a small version of it that is just as effective.
Be open-minded. Do not get stuck with tunnel vision or the box of, I'm a prosecutor and my job is to get a conviction. I'm a defense attorney and my job is to get a dismissal. You've got to be open-minded to all sorts of solutions.
I think it's extremely important to start small. I say that because this is a completely overwhelming thing that we're trying to tackle and overcome. And if you try to take it all on at once, between the political personalities and everything else you've got going on, it's going to be a dismal fail. So I'm a firm believer in taking things small.
I thought, oh my gosh, we have got to stop minding our own business. We can all ask, are you okay? There is nothing threatening about saying, are you okay, when someone is struggling. When it comes to people who are struggling, we now know from Kevin Hines that one person asking that question can save a life. And I know it because I have done it.
Okay, that's the one thing. That was extraordinary. I mean, putting it in the newsletter and just listing it, that actually explained it, put faces of the people. Fantastic. It was just super.
It came out so much amazing. I will talk about the bench book committee a little bit.
So how can we get that snippet to say share with our local folks?
Yeah, it's on our YouTube channel. So the QR code for that is also on the back of your packet. But you can also just search us on YouTube, Texas JCMH, and it should be under the 2022 Summit videos, and also all of the CLEs are up as well, so you can find it in that playlist.
And we can share a link.
We can also share it with you. Yeah. We will send it out. Yeah.
We'll see if you go take a picture like a menu. Okay, so the bench book committee is going to start up again relatively soon. I think we're going to probably do our first meeting in March and have at least 2 full group meetings. We aren't adding any more chapters, but we are going to dive deeper into certain subjects and clarify other subjects. For example, we just had this amazing emergency detention roundtable. Putting all that knowledge into our bench book is going to be one of the things I focus on. And then the reentry chapters of the book and court order medications are others that I really, we have a great group of people that really focus on that. If you have special knowledge in those areas, please consider joining the bench book committee. We do have lists out front of all the current committee members. So if you want to switch committees or join different ones, you just go sign up on that list. And now you get to hear from Judge Wheelis about the juvenile.
Thank you so much, Eva. And Cindy Velas, and we are getting revved back up again, thanks to Molly's leadership and assistance. Will be diving into TJJD, so we have several members who would like to get into a headlock and participate on our.
That's what we do best here.
We bring you to the table so that we can get you in a headlock. So I believe that doing a deep dive on TJJD is educational because they are doing so much in the way of mental health that I'm just catching up with all of their diversionary funding for diversionary programs, short of TJJD for kids who are eligible for TJJD that we looked at. So we'll be reaching out to you for spring and summer meetings. And we'll take anyone from the adult bench book too, if you are willing, who may have. Right. Because we are, in the sincerest form of flattery, copying all. So thank you all. And next up is our doggy coming over. Yeah, that was convenient. Yes, thanks to Kate Harris and the Judicial Commission staff, the 1622 report is finalized and packaged so nicely. We all have copies in front of you. I know that Rose also helped putting all that together. So thank you so much. And there are a lot of QR codes in there. I noticed. So that you can refer to for forms and instructions, but it really is a great solution. So a lot of work and really appreciate the commission and our staff and working so hard today. There's also a one-pager for those of us that like the one-pager summaries that's available for easy reference, and we also have copies of those. The next stage committee meeting is scheduled for February 15th on a virtual meeting, and we're going to discuss the next step in terms of 1624 and begin discussions of also a new project where we're going to look at what data we should be collecting for mental health boards and how we can do this sometimes with limited budgets. And we'll help boards develop some processes, templates, and do that. So I'm excited about that project. I think it's very much needed. Again, I also want to thank the commission for all the work on this report and Judge the other who is providing such expertise in that area and continues to do so. So with that, I'd like to hand it back to Judge Smith.
Thank you, Connie. Appreciate it. We visited a little bit about the strategic plan, but I'm going to share a couple of updates about other work with the long-term planning committee. You might recall the 4 areas of focus have been how to support judges in their work as judicial leaders within the community, creating and augmenting mental health courts and dockets, incorporating best practices for youth, including best practices related to disparate outcomes. We are really going to focus on helping mental health courts and helping establish mental health courts. And so we're going to spend time this year focusing on that. Hopefully that will end up in another summit. We've had one summit on mental health courts, but not summit, a roundtable. So we are going to work very hard on the areas laid out in the long-term plan to bring resources to judges so they can help their communities. Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Megan Lavoie.
Megan is unable to be here. Is Lewis here? Not yet. Not yet. Okay, we'll come back to that.
Okay. So we turn it over to Professor Brian Shannon.
Before we do that, I wondered if our overall chair of legislative wanted to make a few comments. Vice Chair of the Commission, Justice Boyce.
Oh, well, thank you very much, and good morning. Things are proceeding apace, and as demonstrated by the difficulty of finding parking today, the legislature's in session, and things are proceeding apace. So we have a slate of proposals, and Professor Shannon and Judge Carr are going to unpack those in terms of the criminal ones, the civil ones, and then also I think Molly or her deputy will address the juvenile ones. Some of these have been picked up and are now moving forward. Others are still in the process of finding their sponsors. But the hard work of the subcommittees that have been looking at this across multiple years is reflected in our proposals, and we look forward to updating you as the process continues.
Excellent. Thank you. I was the criminal subcommittee chair for our legislative committee. We submitted 7 proposals in that space to the Judicial Council. You had the opportunity to hear discussion in detail about those at an earlier meeting, but we had to get them in prior to the Judicial Council's meeting, which was the 30th of September. They embraced all the proposals, the criminal, civil, and juvenile. So that was good news. They're in the midst with Megan's help of finding sponsors. 2 of the 7 on the criminal side have been filed. Representative Joe Moody filed HB 1401. You'll remember Representative Moody was our guest speaker at our fall meeting talking about the legislative process. And a Texas Tech law grad out of there. With respect to those 2 proposals, this bill's in effect a refile from last session. The 2 proposals included in 1401. The first addresses the statutory authority for JPs and municipal court judges to be able to dismiss Class C misdemeanors when the defendant lacks capacity. Those offenses can't be subject to the 46B process. And so you still have the constitutional issue about, well, what do you do if somebody's not competent or lacks capacity to proceed? So constitutionally, there's a need to act and not proceed to prosecute and to adjudicate in that scenario, but there's not a statutory mechanism. And so this proposal would address that. The second aspect of HB 1401 would permit good time credits for time spent in an outpatient competency restoration program. Those already exist for both inpatient and jail-based. It just creates a parallelism to treat outpatient competency restoration time the same way. The 5 proposals that are awaiting sponsors and we hope enactment include some, I think in some way, meatier, broader bills. One would amend Chapter 46B to limit or create alternatives for the use of competency restoration services for certain misdemeanor cases, primarily Class Bs and non-bodily injury Class As, where there's not been a history of some bodily injury offense in the previous 2 years. For those, the default will be outpatient competency restoration. If outpatient competency restoration is unavailable, then there'd be a process for dismissal of those cases and kicking into the civil side. So we hope there's sponsorship and that will move forward. That bill also includes some other sections, or our proposal includes some other sections, and thanks to Chris Lopez and my committee as we work through trying to modernize some language. That language that's been a sticky part of 46B forever, for docs, for lawyers, for judges, about capable of having their competency restored in the foreseeable future, trying to restyle that in a more functional way and focusing instead on in the view of the doc and the court at a later date, we believe that this person is capable of being restored in the period allowed by the statute. If not, then we're gonna go a different path. And so we hope that that clarification will help if that's enacted. The next proposal has some changes to 46 BO84. A lot of lawyers, courts, will notice there's a gap that was particularly enhanced in COVID, where somebody has been inpatient, their competency has been restored, they've been returned to the county, but they're not tried right away for whatever reason, COVID being a big one, but other reasons as well, and they decompensate. And there's just not anything in terms of guidance in the statute on steps to take. So we're trying to fill in those gaps. That's the primary focus of that bill. Another is to, you may notice in the new CCP guide, it's certainly current with respect to current law that it's class Bs and up. This proposal would authorize the possibility for class Cs, but make it discretionary. And so there's some tension here, worries about the volume of cases that might be there. On the other hand, many times their individual first psychiatric break is going to involve an appearance because of some class Cs in front of the municipal court or JP. This language was in the law for a brief time when the Sanders Land Act was passed, but another statute passed the same session, which was the later enacted statute, didn't have it. So this bill is intended to address that. The next proposal is a follow-up to the bond bill from the special session that followed last time's regular session. There are some inconsistencies between that statute and it's more restrictive in terms of when 17032 can be used to have a bond with mental health treatment conditions for certain offenses. So this attempts to reconcile those. The last of the proposals is a proposal that we kicked around coming out of the prior session or leading into the prior session, so the session before, and it didn't get traction. Our body endorsed the concept and want to provide a special thanks to Judge Hervey, Denise Onka, and Pat Mitchell. We had a small subgroup following kind of our last meeting and prior to the submission to the Judicial Council, doing some fine tuning of the language in this proposal, which will allow for the delay of the arrest of an individual who's been charged with a nonviolent offense, but who is undergoing emergency civil treatment, ED or an OPC. The notion is we're trying to avoid having a diversion in the wrong direction. That somebody's been identified needing emergency civil interventions and then commit some other offense at the facility. It permits an ability to have a delay of arrest there to try to have the treatment happen. So those are our proposals, and we hope they'll be sponsors and that we'll have a happy report around May 31st with that. So let me kick it to Judge Carr to talk about the civil proposal.
We have 4, but does anybody know, like there's always a deadline by which a bill has to be filed or it's not going to get serious attention? Say again? March 11th. So I would suggest if you're particularly, I'm going to go out on a limb here, Chris, you don't fight me later, but if you know a legislator who would be interested in carrying one of these bills, but I would request that it kind of be coordinated. I don't think we want 3 legislators trying to file the same bill. But after looking at this list, I know I'm going to go back to my county and call some of the ones that I know to see if I can't get some of the on the civil side of the docket filed.
Judge Carr?
Yes.
I have late breaking information. Megan Lavoie is not able to be here, but she has shared that Senator Zaffarini has stated an intention to carry these bills all of them as a package. And so it's still, the language that we submitted is still at Ledge Council, but she is intending to carry those bills on the Senate side, and we would need to find a House companion, and we, like you said, coordinate and work with her to make sure that we're rowing in the same direction.
Yeah, and that would also lend further to coordinating. Christie, I don't know who you would designate, but a lot of times, you know, senators have certain House members that they work well with, and the reverse is also true. So probably keeping Christie on the loop to make sure that we're making effective advances in this area. We had 4 proposals. I consider them pretty much meat and potato type of stuff. The first one was a recognition that in rural areas, primarily at certain mental health facilities that are operated under provisions of the Texas Health and Safety Code, well, there may not always be a physician on duty, but there are people who have knowledge of the field who are able to recognize when someone is decompensating or having a significant issue where some form of emergency detention needs to occur. So this would expand the group of people who could submit an electronic warrant application for emergency detention. And it would be a big boon for some of our rural colleagues. And Roxanne Nelson, one of our commissioners, was the one who suggested this proposal, as I recall initially. Second, in the law, there's a provision that when an officer makes a detention without a warrant and the person is found in possession of a firearm, there's authority to seize the firearm, but there wasn't compatible authority. If you took the steps to go get the emergency detention warrant, there wasn't a comparable authority for an officer to seize a firearm at that time. So I believe Chief Lee suggested a term or two back that we consider making all the law consistent, and now this would give an officer in either situation, emergency detention or without a warrant or with a warrant, the ability to seize a firearm found within the person's possession. And again, I'm name challenged here, so I've been retired for 3 weeks. I'm entitled to have mental health challenges now of my own on occasion. But our good friend, the doctor from Waco, psychiatrist, I believe he is. Help me out here, somebody. Well, anyway, really great, entertaining guy. But he put forth is the one I believe is the originator, or certainly jumped on the bandwagon early for, so when you administer these psychotropic medications that can have some significant side effects, this would simply give the appropriate authorized medical staff the ability, in the case of an uncooperative patient, the authority to involve the patient in a process to where they could forcibly take a blood sample if necessary to make sure that the medications are at their level in hopes that the best use of the medication is possible. And finally, there has long been a discussion, many other states have this in the law. I believe this in part came out of Chief Lee's suggestion that to clarify an officer's duty when they present someone at for mental health services. I mean, personally, this is still sort of a broad beachfront. I mean, if you take someone to a facility and the officer drops them off and the patient immediately starts pounding away on one of the staff, of course I would expect it. That's an offense being committed in the officer's presence. I would expect an officer to intervene in that circumstance, because we're not trying to put our health workers at risk here. But on the plain vanilla presentation of a person for services. This would clarify the officer's duty that once they completed the paperwork, then they're free to depart. And this also received considerable support from our rural jurisdictions. Thank you very much. Molly Davis, to you.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, everyone. I'm Molly Davis, one of the staff attorneys for the commission. We had heard that youth mental health is going to be a priority for this legislature. That is turning out to be true if the early filings are any indication. There are many bills focused on expanding services for children and youth, increasing coverage of and access to important medications, and on improving school-related services. But I'm excited to report back to you that the Chapter 55 rewrite that was supported by the commission and approved by the Judicial Council is now House Bill 1359. House Bill 1359. This bill makes a number of revisions to Chapter 55 of the Texas Family Code. Chiefly what it does is it streamlines processes and fitness to release. It also strengthens the value of expert examinations and reports, and it expands the use of outpatient restoration and services when those are appropriate and available. These are lower, no-cost changes that are greatly needed to prevent delays, and hopefully prevent deterioration. So it's still early days. The bill has not been assigned to a committee. It does not have a hearing date set yet. There's not yet a Senate companion bill. But I do want to thank the commission and especially our commission leadership, Justice Bland, Justice Huddle, for making youth mental health a priority. We are going to watch this bill with interest. Thank you very much.
Who's the sponsor of that?
It is G. Blue.
And I believe Lewis is here.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Good morning. My name is Louis Comisetti. I am not Megan Lavoie. She was not able to make it this morning. I am the Director of Government Relations for the Office of Support Administration. I started with OCA in early 2022, so I am a new face to the table and glad to be here. I am going to provide you an overview generally of what has occurred in the legislature so far. As of this morning, there was roughly 1,680 bills filed, 600, in the House and approximately 600 in the Senate. It's very typical to have between 7,000 and last session was unusually high with 10,000 bills. So we have a long way to go and we expect to see many more. 428 bills as of last night were refiled from previous sessions. Senate committees were named this past week. We didn't see any huge surprises. The chair of jurisprudence, where most of the judiciary bills are heard, did change in past sessions. It was Senator Huffman, who is now the chair of Senate Finance, and the new chair of jurisprudence is Senator Hughes, who is also chairing State Affairs. House committee preferences, which are what the legislators send to the speaker to help him select committees, were due or are due early or late this week. So we expect committees to be out in February. Committees did release their interim reports in the last few weeks. Those can be found on the committee's websites. By way of the budget, introduced versions of the House and the Senate were both filed last week, HB1 and SB1. Both were quite remarkable in the sense that normally very few exceptional items or agency requests that are outside of the base budget. Many of them were actually included in the base budget this year. And again, that is highly unusual. Some of the highlights, especially for the judiciary, but across all state agencies as well, is there was a 5% salary increase in 2024, with another 5% salary increase in 2025 for all state employees, which totals $1.8 billion. It's the largest increase we've seen in 40 years. OCA also received $6 million for a case level data system which we think will be a game changer in collecting information, especially on mental health. Judicial pay was not included in the base budget, but it remains a topic that it's still an OCA exceptional item, and it's still a topic that will be heard in both Senate and House budgetary hearings. OCA's or the judiciary's budget, or excuse me, Senate finance hearing will be February 16th, and you'll be able to view that online, of course, if you are not able to attend and you have interest. There are about $50 billion remaining for the legislators to address their legislative priorities. And we're hoping that some of the judiciary's exceptional items will still be addressed, and there's definitely still an opportunity for that. There's a great amount of concern that we've heard, at least at OCA, that if it wasn't in the base budget, there's going to be no money there, and that is not accurate. There's still opportunities there, probably better than many sessions past. Mental health items in the base budget included $9 billion in total funding for mental health services across 26 different state agencies. The changes that we anticipate to see funding wise across the state agencies is $236.3 million to address workforce challenges at state facilities and especially state hospitals, $331.4 million for additional community inpatient beds, $55.5 million to expand child and adult mental health crisis services, including youth mobile crisis outreach teams and youth crisis response units. $60 million to expand community mental health grant programs across Texas, such as mental health jail diversion programs and child and family community mental health programs. Over $30 million to expand multi-systemic therapy for at-risk youth and their families, $156.2 million to expand children's mental health services through Texas Child Mental Health Care Consortium, and last but not least, $24.8 million to expand the current loan repayment program for mental health professionals. Important dates that OCA is tracking is bill filing the deadline is March 10th this session. We've heard the state or the governor's address will be the third week of February. He's going to outline, typically he outlines his legislative priorities in that. He will also identify some emergency items. Typically, or there are no legislative bills heard for the first 60 days of session, except if they've been identified as an emergency item. Last session, for example, bail was an identified emergency item. And so we expect to see a number of those addressed in the legislature early. The state of the judiciary typically follows the state of the state very closely. And we will, once the official date is set for the state of the state, we will follow with an official date for the state of the judiciary. OCA is tracking numerous mental health bills. Senator Zaffarini is working on a mental health omnibus bill that includes all of the JCMH proposals. Another thing that OCA has been participating in is consulting with the legislature for changes to NICS reporting that have become statutorily necessitated by the federal Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which was signed, I believe, last summer by Congress. OCA began a weighted caseload study this past week, which requires judges to keep track of their time, as well as identify what activity they're using their time for. That helps us assess formulas or correct formulas that will help guide the courts as well as the legislature in developing new courts. It sounds like I walked in a few minutes late and some of the specific JCMH legislation has already been addressed, but if there's any remaining.
All right, questions for Lewis? Yes, Dr. Alameda.
I apologize. I missed your presentation. Maybe a year ago, we had a great presentation from somebody from OCA. And it's surprising to see how much you do with very little staff, and it seems to be a very out of date data system. So I was wondering, have you received new funding for improvements in that?
Yes, so included in our base budget is the case level data. We anticipate that that will cost around $6 million, and that was funded again in the base budget. We believe that that will significantly help OCA and the legislature see trends in specific criminal and mental health proceedings, case filings, dispositions, and so it will really be helpful not only to this commission, but many others in assessing what is actually occurring in our courts.
You also receive funding for additional staff to help with that data collection analysis.
So the data collection is mainly done by the clerks, and we presently have a project to help some of the rural clerks called the Uniform Case Management System. That information or those systems that we are targeting at counties with populations under 20,000 will help the rural counties report quickly and accurately. OCA, some of the more urban counties have already been collecting this data, and OCA has just not been able to take it in because we have a legacy system. We believe with addressing the uniform case management system challenges at the smaller rural counties as well as the more urban counties, and now OCA being able to use the money for the case level data, we believe that problem will be solved. There is funding because there is funding for that, it's not largely focused on staff, but we hope that any system we have will automate many of the processes to be able to quickly evaluate what's going on.
Hi, thank you. David Evans, integral care, and also representing the community, local mental health authorities. Just a comment quickly, we're supportive 100% on these necessary workforce issues being addressed through just these 5% increases. Really important critical clinical staff, psychiatrists, nurses, allied professionals. What we're also looking at that's not in the budget today is some type of funding to keep pace with state employees. You know, here in our own backyard, we have both the state supported living center and the state hospital, and serving as the front door and the back door state facilities. We also want some type of parity or understand that we don't want to lose our critical psychiatric nurses and all the good diversion work we're talking about in here because we can't keep pace with the state salary. So just a quick comment that we also have needs to address the community mental health workforce. Thank you.
And if you want to look more in depth at any of these legislative proposals, they're all available in reports from the Judicial Council. So if you go to the website, and the Judicial Council's website, you can pull up the bills and summaries, more specific summaries associated with them. Anything else?
One follow-up question. I'm not sure when you came in, but Christie had shared that Senator Zaffarini was considering an omnibus bill for a lot of our proposals. But do you have any information on possible House members that would contain bills?
No, I've been working with Jorge at Senator Zaffarini's office. I know that omnibus has been submitted to Ledge Council. We know that Ledge Council is extremely backed up right now. And so we have not seen how they plan to structure the proposals, if they're going to include it all in one or if they're going to try and subdivide it. So once we kind of have a better idea of what comes back, we have some prospective members in mind to reach out to.
And I'd just like to share, I know going into last session, that council in their drafting work made some improvements, but a couple of things they did were actually substantive changes from what we had. And so those of us who were committee co-chairs.
Absolutely.
All right. Okay, that concludes the business portion of our meeting. Just Tuttle.
Yeah, so I wanted to recognize one more new member of our collaborative council who's with us today. So I have learned since I introduced everyone else that I missed at least one. If there is anyone else I have missed, please let me know. But for now, I'd like to introduce Magdalena Morales Aina. She's the director of the El Paso County Community Supervision and Corrections Department. So we welcome you, and please spend a minute sharing some more about who you are.
First of all, I'm honored to be here today. I am the director for the adult probation from the El Paso County CCD. I've been, this is my 27th year. I started off as a mental health officer. I was a mental health adult supervision officer for 17 years. So everything that's happening here is just music to my heart, because in the early years, it was really tough. It was really tough, just, getting to the next phase. I learned how to do emergency applications, social security applications, everything as community supervision officers. So it's really great to hear this. I was appointed as the director about 12 years ago in 2011. And since then, I'm also an LPC. I'm a licensed professional counselor, licensed professional counselor supervisor. And the way we attract folks is that I supervise them for free so we can introduce them to working with justice involved individuals. And because I think there is still the stigma of working with individuals who are justice involved. So I'm just really happy to be here today. I wanted to represent and support me. My sister is the director of clinical services at the State Center in El Paso. And so we work together to help our folks who are justice involved with behavioral health conditions, and especially when they require acute care. So I'm humbled to be here. I'm very appreciative, and thank you. I think you saw my power when
Hi, and as many of you were here either saw me at the summit or at a commission meeting last year, we had Dr. Scott Lepore give us kind of an overview on trauma-informed care. And just to follow up on that, today we have Matt Smith, who's a member of our collaborative council. He's the assistant chief of the Williamson County Juvenile Services, and he's going to talk to us about a specific aspect of this, motivational interviewing. And in particular, in connection with youth and trauma-informed care of youth. So we're really delighted to have Matt here with us today, and thank you for starting early for us.
Sure thing. Thank you for having me.
People's time back at the end of the day.
That's always good. My name is Matt Smith. I'm the Assistant Executive Director, Assistant Chief for Williamson County Juvenile Services. And I'm also a little bit of a hybrid in the juvenile justice field, as I'm a certified juvenile probation officer and a licensed professional counselor supervisor. And I also supervise interns for free to get them into our system. So I know what that's like. Those of you that know me know I'm very passionate about what Dr. Lepore presented on trust-based relational intervention, trauma-informed care. What I'm going to present on today is motivational interviewing. And so motivational interviewing was around before the term trauma-informed care. Thank you. And so we began working with motivational interviewing in Williamson County Juvenile around 2010, 2011. And my belief is that it set us up to take on how to be trauma-informed in our system. And so you'll see as I walk through motivational interviewing, even though it wasn't developed as a trauma-informed component, it is very consistent with trauma-informed care. So before I start, how many of you, just by raise of hand, are familiar with motivational interviewing? Okay, I figured that would be the case. So this will likely serve as a refresher for some of you who've had it before, but I did want to include some of the basic elements just to give those of you who aren't familiar with it a taste of what it looks like. And so there's a very small portion of audience participation. I won't make you do much of that. I also want to say I'll be going through this very quickly, and so I'll save some time at the end for questions. But I'll be flying through this to try to do motivational interviewing in 45 minutes is a feat, but I think there's a lot you can get just from learning a few of the skills. So,
Hey, Matt, can you tell everybody what Williamson County was doing before y'all started doing this?
well, so we were operating a military style discipline. It wasn't a boot camp as far as how we termed it, but it looked a lot like a boot camp. And so we transitioned and have since about 2014 from, kind of a strong military component. And there were some benefits of that, a lot of structure, a lot of kids thrived in that structure. But now it's a more of a really comprehensive trauma-informed framework. And so we've had a lot of growth over those years. Okay, so as far as criminal justice, and this commission is a great example of the progress we've made. Just want to highlight that, where we're used to focus so much on monitoring and compliance, and now we're looking at how do we help people make necessary changes to be successful, and that's where motivational interviewing comes from. So as a definition, it's a collaborative, person-centered. We heard how important being person-centered is in the video we watched at the summit. Form of guiding to elicit and strengthen motivation for change. I feel like there's a lot of words there that are really important, but that's kind of a tough definition to grasp. So I think the simpler way to say it, and this is from Bill Miller, who's one of the founders of motivational interviewing, is it's arranging a conversation so that the client ends up making the arguments for positive change and not us as the helpers. And so it's really, if you break it down, we're looking at a spirit that you come into that interaction with. You're looking at a set of skills that we'll go through here in a minute, and also some strategy. And the strategy piece is, how are we guiding that word guiding? How are we guiding that conversation toward change, while also making sure that that client feels like they're in control? And so that's a lot of what motivational interviewing is. So why is motivational interviewing a go-to in our field? It's evidence-based, and there have been more than 1,000 clinical trials now that show beneficial effects. And so Bill Miller is very clear about what works, what doesn't work. It's very important in motivational interviewing that we are measuring the effectiveness of the intervention. And so he's transparent and says 2/3 of those trials show there was benefit. So 1/3 show there's not. But the good news is they're really measuring this as they move forward. The other reasons it's really great in a field like ours is you don't have to have 12 sessions. You can use this in very brief interactions, sometimes even 1 or 2 sessions, and they've done research on this to show an effect, show a positive effect. It's very broad, applies to lots of problem areas. So started out in the substance use recovery field. It is in general healthcare now. A lot of nurses, especially nurses treating patients with diabetes, for example, are trained in motivational interviewing. It's in the juvenile justice, criminal justice systems, in management. I myself have found it very, very helpful in supervising employees. So it's a broad set of skills that are helpful in a lot of ways. It improves outcomes of other treatment methods. And this is some of the more recent research that's come about with motivational interviewing, is that it's not just doing motivational interviewing alone, but if you incorporate and infuse motivational interviewing into something like cognitive behavioral therapy, then your cognitive behavioral therapy outcomes improve. And so that's why it's also a real go-to, because no matter what else you're doing, you can infuse motivational interviewing into it, and it can help with your outcomes. The thing I like most about it is you don't have to be a clinician. Non-specialists can use it. We've trained our juvenile supervision officers. We've trained our juvenile probation officers in motivational interviewing. There is a verifiable component that goes along with it that can get pretty intense. And so we have done some of this, but it is time intensive. But if you really want to get good at motivational interviewing and you want to see really positive outcomes, you have to go beyond a 45-minute session like today, or even a 2-day training. And you end up doing coding and coaching. And so there are training mechanisms within motivational interviewing where you record your session and you have a coach, and those sessions are coded and you get feedback, and that helps you get better and better and better. And we are not currently doing that, but we have done that in the past with probation officers and seen much better outcomes when we get to that level of training. Motivational interviewing crosses cultures well. It's now being done in 50 different languages. It's actually designed to be effective with less motivated clients, even minority clients. They've had some research that show that. And so it's really designed to work with some of our most challenging clients. And then in the field of corrections, what it generally does, what the research says, is it reliably improves readiness for change. And so many of our clients are not at that point yet. And so we're trying everything we know how to get them to be ready to change. We want them to change. Motivational interviewing has been really key in getting clients ready for change so they can move forward in treatment engagement. So how is it different from what we normally do in our systems? We sometimes, and I've done this my entire career, we bang our head against the wall trying to get a client to change. So we're pleading with them. We're using logical persuasion, saying, hey, you realize if you don't get this right, you're going to go to TJJD. Hey, if you don't start behaving, you're going to have to be in seclusion, those kind of things. That doesn't work very well, and we get frustrated and the client gets frustrated, but we tend to kind of do it over and over. So motivational interviewing is different. So we in general we sometimes take on more accountability and responsibility than the client for change. And what motivational interviewing is about is that client taking control of their own change. So it's a drawing out of information, which is difficult because with my own kids especially, you get with a client, you get comfortable, you get frustrated, and you want to just tell them what to do. But this is a drawing out. It has to come from them. So it's real collaborative. It's very supportive. And so we're just pulling out strategically with questions and reflections, their own motivation for change. So a few myths. A lot of people start hearing about motivational interviewing and they think, oh, well, I was trained as a therapist in person-centered counseling. This is just like that. In fact, I am a clinician, but the toughest group that I've trained is counselors because they think they know it all already, but there are some differences with motivational interviewing, and I'm going to go over a couple of those things. It's not easy. It does take time. It does take that coaching and repetition. I have seen people get a lot better though if they just stick with it for several months through coding and coaching. It does not take more time. Sometimes it feels like it does, but the clients get closer to change quicker actually with motivational interviewing. And then the myth that, oh, this won't work on our most difficult clients, it's actually designed for that. So a little bit about change. In order to kind of talk about motivational interviewing, we have to talk about change. And I think this is true of everyone in this room. All of us struggle with certain changes in our lives. So, you would think that people who are having serious health issues, having a heart attack, would change their diet, start taking medication, start exercising. I'm a type 1 diabetic. You would think that I would quit eating sweets and carbohydrates and all the things that raise my blood sugar, but all of us really struggle with those things, and especially the clients that we work with in our courts and in our community. You would think that kids in detention, just that experience of coming to detention and being locked in a room and away from their family and eating the terrible food that we have and all that would be enough for them not to reoffend, but oftentimes it's not. And so just a reminder that every single one of us struggle with change. So why don't we change sometimes? Usually it's these 4 reasons. One is it's not worth it to us. We don't care enough. So we're kind of unmotivated to change. What we're doing in some way is working for us. Some people don't know how to change, right? And we have, I'm used to working in the juvenile system, but we have a lot of kids that come into our system that we're expecting to make changes that they've never developed the skills to make the change. Why some people don't change because they don't see why they need to. They like doing what they're doing. They like the power and control of some of the things that got them into trouble. And then others, I think this is the toughest population to work with, don't even recognize the need to change. So it takes a lot of time with those clients to sort of show them, hey, what you're doing working for you or not. But these are generally the reasons that we struggle. So the key with motivational interviewing, again, has to come from that intrinsic motivation. That's what we're working for. In the boot camp days that Leslie was talking about, we could get compliance. We could have kids stand a position of attention and march and look really good, but most of those kids were not changing internally. And then when they got back out in the community, they were struggling and ended up back with us, too many of them. So we're looking for intrinsic motivation to change because we know that that is what creates the long-term success. So change is more likely, again, for all of us, if it's our choice, if it comes from us, if we feel like we have the skills, and then the relatedness piece, if we feel like there's someone out there that's going to support the change. Stages of change. I know many of you have gone to lots of training in this, but we have to identify with the clients in motivational interviewing, where are they in these stages of change? Pre-contemplation, have they never even thought of changing? Are they contemplating change? Have they made any preparations to change? Are they taking some action to change? And then once they've done that, how do they maintain that change? So the maintenance piece is really important too. I know many of us, me included, started going to the gym again, January 1. Where will we be in March? Will we still be doing that? So that maintenance piece is really important. So this guy here, let's take a look at him for just a second. Just quick audience participation. So where do we think he is as far as the stages of change? Where is this guy? Anybody? So he's not in the action phase. So pre-contemplation. He's in denial. So we did cover that. And a lot of people saying they don't even think he's in pre-contemplation, not even on the chart. So I've presented this slide a fair amount, and I have some folks that sometimes argue, okay, let's take a look at him. He did go to the doctor. Now, maybe that wasn't voluntarily, but perhaps he's gone to the doctor and he's at least sticking with the only one drink. That's a very large drink. But he at least is verbalizing that he's attempting to follow his doctor's orders. But the reality is we have a lot of clients like this, right? And us ourselves, we struggle with ambivalence. And ambivalence is feeling 2 ways about change. So there's a part of us that knows we need to change and are hearing that from people that love us and our caretakers and our physicians and our counselors. So we know that's really what's best for us, but we struggle still to change. So what I'd like you to do right now, each of you, we're not going to share this out, we'll make you do that. I want you to write one thing down on a piece of paper in front of you. It can be small, it doesn't have to be your deepest, darkest secret, but what is one thing that you have tried to change over time and struggled with because you were ambivalent? So take just 1 minute. Okay, so for me, I'll share mine. Mine is drinking coffee, and I've struggled with it for years. And I love the taste of coffee. I like having coffee in the morning. I like the smell. I like to drink it on the way to work. But I've gotten in periods of my life where I can't stop drinking coffee all day long. I love it that much. I know that it's not good for me. I know that certain days it raises my blood sugar. I know it wears me out in the afternoon sometimes. And I know it's habit forming. But that is the thing. And so I feel two ways about it. It serves enough of a purpose for me now. I have a large cup in the back that I'm still doing it, even though I know health-wise, it's probably not the best thing for me to drink that much coffee. So that's an example of my ambivalence there. And so there are times when I'm able to cut back on it. There's other times where it gets out of control again. It just tends to go that way. So when we're talking about ambivalence, those are the kinds of changes I think that people struggle with. Of course, our clients, some of them have more serious change that is more life-threatening or risk of further incarceration. So it's a little more serious than the coffee example. Okay, want to talk a little bit about this. This to me, I didn't understand this when I was first trained in motivational interviewing, but this is a really key piece to why motivational interviewing works. And it's based on Daryl Bim's, he's a psychologist, self-perception theory. And that theory says basically that when we're ambivalent about something, or when we don't have a lot of experience with something and we're trying to formulate an opinion of ourselves within that context, that we tend to see how we act and see what we say about those things, and that then forms our self-perception and opinion. So I know that's kind of complicated, but in general, that's what the findings that they've studied with motivational interviewing say, is that when a person or a client speaks about positive change, then they are more likely to change. So the goal then with motivational interviewing is to use the skills and the spirit and the strategy to get them to talk about positive change. So, and that's where the goal is. So that's in motivational interviewing, that's called change talk. So if we can get our clients to be verbalizing change talk, then we're headed in the right direction. And then we can help, once they say that, that starts to form their self-perception of what they think and who they are. And that helps them move in a different direction. So we're going to go through some examples of change talk, which is where we want to go. That's what we want to hear from clients. And then sustain talk. Sustain talk is sort of defending that thing that's not good for us. Well, I need my coffee, you know, or coffee's not all that bad. It's better than drinking alcohol. That would be sustain talk. So these examples here, I don't think I can do that. That change or sustain. Sustain talk. My wife doesn't care, so why should I? Sustain talk. I know I need to quit. Change talk. We hear that, we know we're on the right path. I'm starting to feel like I can do this. Great to hear, right? You got to grab that when you hear it. You know you're headed in the right direction. My kids are important to me and I don't want to hurt them. That's change talk. That's a reason outside of yourself, but it's still a reason to change. I wish I could, but I don't know how. That's still change. That's change in there. You wish you could. And so then there's some discussion about, well, let's find the skills to support you. I can't live without marijuana. There's sustain for sure. Yeah. And I don't want to live like this anymore. Change talk. So, and what the research says is what the clients say predicts the outcome. So we pay a close attention to what we're getting back from our client in a conversation. And so that's the first piece, right, with motivational interviewing, is not learning all these skills I'm about to show you. It's paying attention to what the client is saying and understanding, is that change talk or is that sustain talk? So we're going to skip a little bit. So we're going to talk a little bit about the spirit of motivational interviewing. So again, the spirit is that much like trauma-informed care, that we as the helper are accepting that client for who they are, where they're at, the choices they're making. It's unconditional positive regard. So a lot of motivational interviewing came from Carl Rogers' Rogerian therapy, which was, you know, kind of the beginnings, in my opinion, of trauma-informed care. But it's a way of being with people where they feel like you're not judging them and you're there to listen and understand them. And so sometimes in these interactions, it's simply acknowledging, even if you're hearing a lot of sustain talk, that yes, it is up to you. You're going to make your own choices. and there's nothing I can do to stop you. And sometimes when you verbalize things like that, clients find their own reasons to change, but they have to feel like they're in control, or we're going to get resistance. That's what motivational interviewing teaches. Okay, so if we sum up the spirit of motivational interviewing, it is you cannot make someone else change. You can't make your spouse change. You can't make your kids change, your best friend, your boss. And we certainly can't make our clients change. It is their choice, and it's always their choice. And so we know we're not going to be with them, with our clients throughout the rest of their lives, right? So that's why another reason I love motivational interviewing is you're trying to get that internal intrinsic motivation so that when they're out of your court or when they're out of your jail or your detention center, that it's not dependent on you to keep them in line, right? That they are able to keep those things going because they want to make the change, they have the skills, and you've identified somebody in the community that can support their ongoing change. All right. So Bill Miller, I think, summed it up really well. There's something in human nature that resists being coerced and told what to do. Ironically, it's acknowledging other people's right and freedom to make their own choices that makes that change possible. So a lot of wisdom there, could help out a lot of our marriages and families if we could just follow this. Okay, so want to talk about that's sort of the spirit, and I think you all get that. And that's, again, a big piece of what this commission is trying to do is meet people where they're at, and especially our people who are most vulnerable and who are struggling. So I want to talk through some of the technical skills very briefly, but I think this it will give you all a sense of what this looks like in a conversation. And so motivational interviewing is loaded with, I'm not going to go through them all, but it's loaded with mnemonic acronyms to help you remember. So one of the main ones we're going to focus on today is OARS, which stands for open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. So you use your OARS. Those are the skills you're going to use as the helper to get your client toward change. So open-ended questions, and I know those of you that were trained as attorneys were trained to ask closed questions a lot of the time. This is a little bit different. So actually a lot different. And even for a juvenile probation officer, I mean, we're used to traditionally asking those closed-ended questions just to get specific information or to be challenging or to try to push them towards something, but open-ended questions. So, and the key with motivational interviewing, right? It's when you first start doing this, a lot of people try to ask the most brilliant open-ended question. You don't have to do that. It can be simple. And some of the better open-ended questions are simple. So a simple question like you get at a stuck point. Well, what else? Tell me what else is going on. Even though tell me about is a statement, it's a stem that creates a statement, it's considered an open-ended question. So a lot of my best open-ended questions as I've done this is tell me about this, tell me about your drinking, tell me about your support system, those types of things. What things might work for you. And then sometimes your client's not motivated internally, they are motivated by their family, potentially, or their loved ones. So you can ask open-ended questions about that. What concerns do your parents have about your drug use? And then at least you're going to hear some reasons that they need to change. So we'll do a real quick, again, audience participation. So how do we change? Do you really want to quit drinking to an open question? What would be a better?
How's your liver?
It could be considered challenging. I'm not sure we'll go with the spirit of motivational interviewing, but it is technically, yes, that's an open question. So how do you feel about your drinking? Yeah. Tell me how your drinking's been going this past month, those kind of things. So is this pattern of behavior hurting you? What will you get with that usually? You get a yes or a no, or I don't know from a client. So what's a better way to ask that question?
What's your relationship with alcohol?
What's your relationship with alcohol? What have been some of the negative side effects of drinking? You know, so with that ambivalence, what you learn in motivational interviewing is you explore both sides. You don't want to be so one-sided with your questions that they feel like, oh, he's pushing me over here. So you talk about what does work for you? Why do you drink so much? What do you like about it? What are the negative things? What is it costing you? And then you just kind of help that client have a mirror where they can weigh out those options. Okay, so not so good questions. These are ones we're going to avoid. Why can't you? Why don't you? Why won't you? Again, it's tough with your own kids or spouse. Did you really think that was going to work? And I literally, I've said that to clients, and I know other people have. But what is that going to do if you start asking these kind of questions? Just it increases resistance. It might make you feel better, but it really is not going to help that client move forward. So we covered open-ended questions. It's important. That's one of the things you do when you are coding within motivational interviewing is you literally look at the questions that are being asked and you code them as open or closed. And you want to have at least 3 to 1 open to closed as your ratio. So a lot of open-ended questions. So affirmations. This is of all the skills on the orgs we'll talk about. This is the one you use the least, but it has the most effect. So when they've measured this in clinical trials, they said affirmations actually lead to the most change, even though you're not using them as often as some of these other skills. And so affirmations can be a lot of different things, but just basically affirming for a client that something's going well, even if it can be a small change. So a lot of these reasons here. I think the very last one on the slide there, the best type of affirmation is recognizing someone's efforts or strengths or abilities. And that's the best way to affirm somebody. So we're going to look at a few examples. I think that would really work for you. It sounds like a good plan you've come up with. Thank you for taking care of that. I appreciate you showing up on time today. Man, have it be genuine, not sarcastic, right? These are genuine affirmations. And then, that's a really good idea. So those are just real simple affirmations, but make sure you're not missing them. So when people start practicing motivational interviewing, and I was guilty of this, I struggled with the affirmations because I was so focused on the other skills, but affirmations are really, really powerful. So I understand it's hard for you to talk about this, but you have a lot of resources that will help you deal with this problem. That's an affirmation. You're a person with really high integrity. You've done the right thing here. I know it was difficult, but you did the right thing. The progress you've made is really impressive. It took a lot of hard work to get here. Those are all affirmations. So what's the difference in these two? These are both great things to say to anybody, right? I'm proud of you. And this was important to you. You worked hard to make this happen. But what is the main difference?
The latter focuses on the person. The first one focuses on your opinion.
Yes. So the first one, I'm proud of you. And again, a great thing to say. You're never going to get in trouble for saying I'm proud of you. But it's sort of saying, this is about me evaluating you. And so the second statement is much better because you want them to feel good about their own progress. So this is something that you did. You worked hard. You struggled through this. You made the progress. So we try to have our affirmations be more you focused rather than I focused. Yes.
Well, and you affirm the whole person in the first one, but you affirm the positive behavior in the second.
That's a good point. So yeah, the second one's way more specific, right? It's going to talk about whatever that was specifically that you think helped them get to that point. No cheerleading. Motivational interviewing, this is hard to do sometimes in our fields. You want to just affirm. But what happens when you over affirm? It loses its meaning. And so, clients then feel like, I'm not sure this is even genuine. Yeah, I didn't really do all that well, and I'm hearing every day, yeah, oh, great job. So
no participation trophies.
Yeah. So, and this is a tough one to determine, right? Because each client's different. I'm the kind of person, if I'm cheerleaded, it feels ungenuine to me, and I start to retreat. I start to say, I'm not sure this person is being real with me, So some people need a little more affirmation than others. So you just have to kind of look at the feedback that you're getting from the client. But again, affirmation is the skill we're going to use the least. Okay. Reflections. This is the skill you're going to use the most. And this is also the most difficult skill within motivational interviewing. And this is where even some of the counselors struggle. So a reflection is basically just reflecting back to a client in a statement what they have just given to you. So, and there's a lot of ways you can do that. A client can tell you something and you can reflect back their ambivalence. That's a really good reflection, where you're saying, you said this and you said this. You can simply repeat back to them. I would change the words a little bit, not sound like a parrot, but you can simply, a simple reflection is just repeating back what they've said in a different way. You can change it to an emotion. You can say they've given you a bunch of information that you can tell they're elevated about or they feel strongly about, and you can say, you feel really strong about that. You feel really sad about that. You feel really angry about that. That's a reflection. Or simply rewording something. So we'll look at some examples. The key with reflections is not just about repeating back the words in a different way. It's trying to listen to them in a way that you get to what are they really saying to me? And sometimes, all of us sometimes struggle to articulate our feelings, especially when it's a really tough situation, right? And our clients are the same way. They're going through some tough times. So sometimes what they're saying may not exactly be what they want to say. And so you're trying to get the meaning behind what they're trying to say. So some simple reflections. Again, these don't have to be the most amazing reflections. So client says, I'm not sure I buy into this outpatient stuff you said I need to attend. And your reflection back is, you're not sure about treatment right now. Okay. So the key with reflections is your inflection at the end of that statement. So sometimes when someone says, I'm not sure I buy into this outpatient stuff, you might say, you're not sure about treatment right now. That's a question. So a reflection is, you're not sure about treatment right now. So you're not asking them to clarify. Again, you're mirroring back the response so they can hear what they've said. And then what will happen if you don't reflect effectively? They'll tell you. And so that's fine. You're going to make mistakes with reflections, but at least then you know exactly what they're saying. And so then you can just try to reflect back that second thing. I'm so sick and tired of being told what to do. You're frustrated with others telling you how to act. A simple reflection. Some of the more complex reflections, and these are difficult, but once you can get good at them, you can see substantial change in clients. These are really effective. Would be to amplify what they're saying. So you kind of make it bigger than what they say. I'll show you an example in a minute. Double-sided, where you're giving both sides of that ambivalence, and then using a metaphor or a simile is another complex reflection. So here's an amplified reflection. I have so many things to do with probation, I don't even know what to do. Your reflection back, this is too much for you to handle. Why would you amplify that? Because you want to hear change talk. And what Chandra just gave me was change talk. No, it's not. I can do this. Right? So that's a really strategic reflection so that you can get back some change talk. And then you can follow that. Well, so you think you can do it. Tell me about how you might do that. So then you follow up with that. Double-sided reflection. This is my favorite one. And so my personal experience using motivational interviewing with kids, this was one of the biggest transitions I saw. This was a kid in our residential program I was working with. He was getting ready for release to go back home to the community. He had done really well, but he was a kid I was worried about because I felt like he was just skating through the system and he'd not really touched what he needed to change. And so as he got closer to leaving, we finally got to this point where he started talking about how worried he was about going back out and all the risk factors and what was he going to do and what ifs. And so I simply reflected back both. Hey, on the one hand, you seem really excited about leaving the program. You got another month left with us. At the same time, what I'm hearing is you're pretty nervous about not having enough structure in place and what might happen, right? So, and you just lay out that double-sided reflection and that gets their wheels turning, and then you see what comes next. So the other thing that we tend to do in motivational interviewing when we're learning it is you if they don't say anything, then you're like, oh, I got to come up with another reflection, or I got to come up with another question. But the power of silence is awesome with these kind of reflections. Just let them process, let them hear, and see where they go from there. Double-sided reflections. So just like this one I just gave you, which side do you want to end with? What's that?
You're excited about leaving the program.
What you would want to end with is what is going to give you the change talk you want to hear, right? So it just kind of depends on what leads to change talk. But this one is, I want this kid to talk about his fear, and I want him to talk about, so we can develop a relapse prevention plan. So strategically, you're going to end with that side, because the side that you end with is usually the one they're going to talk about. So if you flip this sentence, they're going to want to talk about just, oh yeah, I can't wait to be free and go be with my friends and all those kind of things. So strategically, this is how you use those kind of reflections. All right. Metaphor simile. My mom's always exaggerating. I haven't been that bad. You might use an old school metaphor. You feel like she makes mountains out of molehills. Now, this came directly out of our training, and I left it in there. Exactly. This is not an effective metaphor anymore. So you have to. I use my son to know what the current lingo is. So I don't know if y'all have heard of the term mid. Anybody know what mid is? I didn't know what that was, but yeah, that's the new word for like so-so. Oh yeah, that party was mid. So you do have to keep in line with what the metaphors and similes of the day are. The very last skill is summaries. So summaries are sort of a collection of reflections. So summaries can be very effective also within the conversation. So the times when you want to summarize, obviously session's ending and you've got to summarize before you move on and go to the next session. So it serves as a transition. But you also want to summarize or use summaries when you get to a stuck point. So if you feel like you're trying to use the skills appropriately and your client's continuing to give you not change talk, but sustain talk, or your client has just kind of shut down and they're done talking, this is a good time. It's a trigger to go, okay, maybe now's a good time to summarize. The cool thing about summaries is this is your opportunity to strategically guide it in a different direction. So just like the double-sided reflection, you got to reflect back everything they've said to you in the summary, but you're going to end on and focus on the things you want them to continue talking about. And so, the stems for summaries are, let me make sure I got this right. I just want to summarize where we're at. So, hey, you've committed to change a little bit. Let's talk about what that looks like. You said you would do X, Y, Z. And then you end your summary with, what do you think would be the first step you would take? So you're using summaries strategically to move on down the line towards change, but very effective. So anytime I get stuck, I just go back, summarize, and then try to move forward again. All right, real quickly, going to go over 2 more tools and we'll be about done. I know I'm standing in front of lunch for you. So 2 scaling exercises that are a little bit different. This is where motivational interviewing has a tweak. And I'm ashamed to say that just this week, a colleague of mine sent me a TikTok video that shows this scaling question. So motivational interviewing has made it to TikTok. But
if you're a state agency, you're not allowed to have
yeah. But the TikTok video was very brief and it was appropriate, but it was basically saying, hey, if you need a quick strategy to get someone to move towards change, this is a good strategy. And it was exactly what I'm about to talk to you about. So there's two scales that we use in motivational interviewing. One is the importance scale, and the other is called the confidence scale. So the importance scale is a question about how important is it to you to make this change. The confidence scale is going to be how confident are you that you can make these changes. So just like we've asked scaling questions, you get it in when you go to the doctor, we use it in different ways. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is it for you to make this change? The difference with motivational interviewing is the second question, which is B, listed on the slide. Why are you at it? Let's say they say a 4. Why are you at a 4 and not at a 1? So what our minds go to, why are you not at a 6? Because we need to get you to a 6 and now you're at a 4. But we first with motivational interviewing go, why are you not at a 1? How are you at a 4? And why would we start there? It's strength-based. It's gonna get them to talk about what they've done already, or how important it is, why it's important to them to make those changes. So that is change talk. So you're getting that change talk out of their mouth first before you go, okay, now how do we get you to a 6? So you do follow up eventually with how do we get you to a 6 or how do we get you to a 7? The other key with scaling questions is if they give you a 4 as their number, then your end question shouldn't be how do we get you to a 10. It should be how do we get you to a 5? Just what's that next step? What would it take for you to go from a 4 to a 5? So just to go through it again. So you're starting with why are you not at a 0 or why are you not at a 1? And then that second question is how do we get you 1 up from where you gave us? So make sense? Okay, same thing with confidence. And I think it's important, you can use just one of these by themselves. I think it's important to look at both of these in motivational interviewing because something can be important to us, but we can be not that confident about it, and vice versa. We can be confident, but not really care about it. So we do the same thing with a confidence scale. Why are you at a 0? Or why are you at a 5 and not a 0? And they'll give you those reasons. Okay, now how do we get you to a 6 as far as being confident? Is there a skill set you need? Is there something else we need to do? And if you forget this, you can go on TikTok and you can find the videos. So I want to answer any questions you may have, but I want to highlight a couple of resources first. And you also have a handout that was provided that I think is pretty good. That's from William Miller and Stephen Rolnick, who are the creators of motivational interviewing. So that's directly from them. A couple of the resources, the first website that I have listed there is called the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers website, or the MINT website. It is the best website out there, and it's the go-to. It's the one I would go to. There are some motivational interviewing websites. There's a lot of them, and there's some that are really not great and not consistent with what the founders wanted. This is the main one, and so this is also a good place to go. They have a lot of videos. They have a lot of video training. You can look at their conferences. In order to be a MINT is what it's called in the motivational interviewing network of trainers, you have to have the highest level of training in motivational interviewing. And that generally requires you going to an international conference and presenting, and you're taking your tapes and showing that you've reached competence. And so when you're looking for trainers, if you want to bring in a trainer, this is a good place to go because they have all the mints across the world listed. So I will recommend one who's in Texas. I don't know what he's charging, but his name is Scott Walters, and he's done a lot of work with CMIT out of Sam Houston State. He worked with North Texas for a long time. Now I believe he's at University of Texas Public Health. So he's at least in Texas, but he is a really great trainer in motivational interviewing. Yes.
I was going to add, we have 2 MINT trainers at El Paso that I can always make available as well. And we offer our MI training, 2-day training initially, We offer it every quarter, so.
Awesome.
Staff or anybody could always visit El Paso.
We might send some staff your way then, yes. The third one down on this slide where it says 2 probation officer interviews, that's a really great training video. It shows an interaction with a probation client, an adult probation client, and it shows a traditional model versus what it looks like with motivational interviewing. So it's a real brief way to get a picture of what that looks like. And then the very last one on this slide is a training curriculum that we purchased at our agency. It's not very expensive. It may have gone up some because we purchased it years ago, but it's a video training, so it's easy to use, and it has the founders talking through a lot of the pieces that I just went through very quickly, but it also has mock sessions that you can look at for different problem types with different trainers. And so it's a real helpful way to see what motivational interviewing looks like in a conversation. And then these are more just research articles, a lot of motivational interviewing in corrections, obviously, and drug treatment courts. All right, so this is the last thing I just wanted to mention is I have, oops, what am I looking at? Yes. Go ahead.
Motivational area, we do not judge the motivation and reasons. That is, he only wants to do this because of avoiding whatever.
Yes, no, I appreciate that. Yes. So yeah, when the client is coming up with reasons, we have to stay in that spirit of being non-judgmental. So even if the reasons are not the reasons you think they ought to be motivated, or maybe they're not the most intrinsic, any reason to change, whether that's, I don't want to have to pay my fees, my wife wants me to do it, I don't really care. It doesn't matter. So we have to make sure that, again, those reasons are their reasons. And sometimes, even though the reasons may not be great, it might be enough to still get them to change. And so I think that, thank you, Judge Lewis, I appreciate that.
Well, and
Yes,
then
ma'am.
that one more thing, I think the underlying thing is you really want to meet them where they're at.
Yes.
And grow from there.
Yes, so, and that's hard, because we want, sometimes we have limited interaction. We want to pull them as far as we can in a session, but it is at their pace. So one of the videos on the series that we purchased that I thought was really good is Bill Miller is with a client who literally will not respond for about the first 30 minutes of conversation. And but he does exactly what you're talking about. He sits there with him calmly, patiently, tries not to judge, uses silence, and eventually he starts to draw some tiny little pieces out of this guy. But it would be easy for him to get frustrated or go, you know what, if you're not going to talk today, we're just going to shut this down. That client did still sit there, and he talked to him about that. I know this is difficult for you. I know you're not wanting to open up, but I do appreciate you sitting here. So he acknowledged that, and that started to get that client moving forward. So that's a really important piece too. Yes, ma'am.
Have you seen judges or attorneys use this, law enforcement, outside of just mental health providers?
I've not seen judges, but I know what the research says is that there are drug treatment courts that use it. And I don't know if that's the other professionals in the room or the judge, but my assumption would be you would want the whole court to be doing that. I think definitely in a brief interaction with a judge, I think you could really make a lot of progress. Even the scaling question from a judge, those scaling questions, I think, could go a long way if you use those in court hearings. It's been mainly in adult corrections, like juvenile probation. Adult probation and juvenile probation. That is a lot of the stuff that I'm familiar with. But, others may know of that. So I'll go here first and then back to Connie. Yes, sir.
I don't know if this is considered personality test, considered like serious research or witchcraft, but 5 years ago, roughly, I learned what to me was profound, the difference between people who are thinkers versus feelers. And so an awful lot of what we were talking about was, how do you feel about this? What I learned is that when you ask a thinker that, they not only close down, they kind of get upset that you're asking them about how they feel. So I'm wondering, as someone who would be dealing with that, how do you anticipate, or how do you really like, oh, I'm dealing with someone that's not reacting well because of the way I'm asking the question?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I mean, each client is going to be different. So if you're trying to reflect with a feeling reflection and that's not going well, then you're gonna have to change course. And I think the only way to know that is going to be paying really close attention to how they're responding. And if you've tried a couple reflections where you're trying to reflect a feeling and they're going the opposite way, that might be a good signal. I've never thought about this, but I would think it would be a good signal to go, okay, well, maybe I do need to think of just reflecting more exactly what they're thinking, or, exactly closer to what they're actually saying and what they're feeling. So, and that's a key piece. And I think it's, it's just information, right? We might get that back and go, oh, this client's resistant. But the term in motivational interviewing is discord. So it's not just that the client is resistant, it's that there's something that's not working. So, and that has to be the way we think, is what can I do differently as a helper? What's a different strategy I can use that might create some more progress? So that's a great point. Yes.
Excellent presentation.
Thank you.
I really, one of the things that this is an intervention or school that can add intervention. We don't have to be punished. I guess my question, comment, with workforce wellness, workforce resiliency, anxiety disorders among our workforce. So this requires really present in age. So I just wanted your thoughts on that. Because again, remember again, it requires
yes.
Take the time, ask the not number, not even focus. So what are your thoughts on that?
So I think that's really valid. I think when we're learning this with trauma-informed care in this day and age, right? I mean, if we as the helper are completely dysregulated, we're not going to be able to regulate the person in front of us or help them in any way. I think it's consistent with what you would find with motivational interviewing. What I would say though is that as you get a little bit stronger with motivational interviewing, I think you find that it helps, right? So it's a way to reduce the tension in the room that might also help you as the helper. And so I think you do have to be in the right space to be able to help somebody else, absolutely. But just starting out, maybe even if you're having a stressful day, starting out with an open-ended question or an affirmation may have the client respond better, and that makes it, an easier conversation. But certainly, this is a really tough time to be a helper like this. We're all struggling with that.
So we are going to take our 30-minute break. We'll reconvene at 12:30, but first let's give Matt Smith a round of applause. So lunch is outside, out these doors, and provided by the Court of Criminal Appeals. So help yourself. We'll reconvene at 12:30.
You're running your docket.
lights, please. All right, welcome back. And we've got several people that wanted to make announcements. I asked that you try to limit your announcements to just 2 minutes. And if you didn't turn in a card and want to be recognized, let us know. And Dr. Alameda, you're the first one up on my list. Is that all right?
I was just getting my shirt.
She can't. 2 minutes. I'm glad I reserved one.
Yes, I just wanted to make an announcement. So we, TCU we are looking at first expenses on their law enforcement module. TCU has the TDRI law enforcement module of the TDRI. And again, working with Dr. Cox and Randy Kaiser with UPS, and also Dr. Scott will be coming down. Honored to, be working with him on this, and I can send you all some information. Again, this is a great opportunity. Just looking at, what providing first responder, law enforcement, some of the tools, CDRI, but also having this recognition about the trauma that impacts our first responders, and giving them some tools also to manage that when they're responding. The training is going to be in February and
Now, we've got the school on the 12th floor.
Okay, Tim Bray, you're up next. The Meadows Institute.
So Dr. Keller just wanted me to mention that there's some national funders that are convening a multi-state collaborative on crisis care diversion opportunities. And what they're doing is they're bringing a bunch of states together to look at what of the various states have accomplished in terms of diversion programs for crisis care, what have been proposed, what are in the works, some ideas, thoughts, just sort of a collaboration between some of the more forward-thinking states, of which Texas has been one. And so they have invited us, Meadows, to attend, as has HHSC will be there as well, to sort of collaborate with other states, get some ideas, share our experiences, and really hopefully take away from that some good ideas.
Terrific.
Yes.
Okay, and Adrian Kennedy, and I think Greg also both have announcements, so we'll hear from NAMI.
Hey, Greg.
Okay, Greg.
I'm trying to finish my bite. Hi, everyone. I'm Greg Hanch with NAMI Texas. I wanted to share with you that next week on Wednesday, we're having the Texas Mental Health Capital Day Rally and Advocacy Training. There are going to be about 350 Texans coming in from across the state to advocate for mental health reform. We'll be hearing from Justice Bland on the south steps of the Capitol. We're very excited for her presentation. Christy Taylor is going to be involved as well. And several legislative offices will be part of the conversation as well, both on the south steps at 12:30 on Wednesday of next week, and then in our advocacy training in the Capitol Auditorium beforehand. So please feel free to join us. We'll be advocating for some items related to criminal justice. I know in particular, the grant program for justice involved individuals that the appropriations bill proposes increased funding for, the community mental health workforce to sort of bolster the community mental health workforce and provide pay raises to people who work in those settings. And then the increased funding for coordinated specialty care for people experiencing a first episode of psychosis. Those are among the items that we'll be advocating for. Please feel free to join us, take your own meetings with legislative offices if you consider yourself a mental health advocate, and bring your own topics and your own expertise to the conversation on February 1st, Wednesday of next week. And the time to really show up and be there in full force is 12:30 p.m. Wednesday on the South Steps Capitol. Thank you all.
Are you ready? I'm ready. Thank you. Appreciate it. First of all, tomorrow night at Book People, both this national CEO of NAMI, the National Alliance of Mental Illness, will be at Book People along with Dr. Ken Duckworth. So Dan Gillison and Ken Duckworth, Dr. Ken Duckworth, who just finished writing a book that's out now called You Are Not Alone. So I'm sure if any of you are near or around the Book People tomorrow at 7, they will be there. And you'll also meet some Texans who actually participated in the book, in the interviews that were done by Dr. Duckworth. So it's the first book that NAMI has ever put out, and it's made a couple of bestseller lists. So within the first few weeks, actually, of it being released, so we're really proud of it. And I'm kicking myself because I had a box of sample books out of that book, 20 pages out of the book that I didn't bring. So next time, I promise. The other thing is I want you to know and put on your calendars that NADCP, the national conference of NADCP, will be held this year in Houston. Now, last year we had Dr. Andy Keller. We also had John Petrola speak at the conference, but we also want you to know that I have a very close relationship with Vanessa Price, who is the division director for the National Drug Court Initiative. And she has 3 tracks that she's filling in. So if you're interested in making particular presentations in a mental health track that Vanessa is in charge of, because in fact, NADCP has multiple brands underneath its umbrella, and mental health issues and mental health courts are one of them. And she's also in charge of the law enforcement track and the training track. So she wanted me to announce this to you. Please let me know. You'll have my email, I think, through the Judicial Commission sites. And if you have interest in participating or putting together a presentation that I'm sure, because it being in Houston, at least there's not a lot of travel involved. The other thing I want to have you know is that I've just been put on a national panel called Aspire, and don't make me say what the letters stand for, but it's about supporting it. It's a nationally funded program out of ODEP, where they are looking for 7 states every year to mount a campaign, and obviously Texas is a huge state, but putting constituents together that could put together a proposal at the national level for millions of dollars of funding in support of education and support of employment for people with mental illness, including people with mental illness who are justice involved. So this is evidence-based practice, is a 20-year-old brainchild of Dr. Robert Drake. And he, by the way, has a team of people who will help anyone. If we can do a series of agencies and groups and high interest people together, he will help that formulate the grant that we then can put forward to ODEP. The grant cycle was very tight when I first got on the committee. The grant cycle actually begins October, the deadline is October 31st. So we have from now until October 31st. And then I was thinking of people like you and others in the healthcare world, and also in the legislative process, and all our different partners that actually are at the table around the Judicial Commission. I think we could probably, and Andy knows about it, and I've also talked to us about what it would look like to put together that kind of a proposal. It's a 2-year grant, and it's always in the millions. There are now a number of states who are coming into their 2nd year, and then they try to cycle 2 more or more states. For 7 states a year get selected. FYI. So anyway, so don't forget Book People tomorrow and the NADCP conference. Thanks. Wonderful. Scott Sullivan.
Scott Sullivan, Texas CIT Association, that's Crisis Intervention Team. Our annual conference coming up April 20th through 22nd in Sugar Land, Texas this year. We have a great lineup of speakers coming along. We offer TCO credit for our law enforcement and CEUs for our clinical people to show up, our first responders out there. So if y'all can help spread the word, get your people registered for the conference, we'll be happy to see you there. Thank you.
Judge Helms.
Just wanted to throw out there that one of the things, I'm on the Texas Council of Community Centers, and we are very concerned over the fact that while it looks like we have a good projection for what the mental health stuff would be covered on with the ledge, that we need to talk to them, if you are so interested in educating them, to talk with them about the fact that IDD is not included. They did not go up on any of the monies that they were going to be in. In fact, a few years ago, we got a cut in the money for IDD, and that affects us and the people that we work with greatly too. So if you get an opportunity to speak to any of the legislators, please ask them to up the money for the IDD folks.
Wonderful, and to know that, I mean, not wonderful.
Yeah,
but
right,
good-
I know,
That's good information for the spring to know.
I got you. And by the way, if you can get some of these 988 to put on the back of your phone, I love it when people go 988. What does that mean? I love it. It gives us a chance to teach about what we are now capable of doing with 988. So, and you can get these to put on the back of your phones. So, I got it from the Harris Center. I don't know where they got it, but I know they're available.
If you want it, we'll figure out how to get you one. Next meeting.
All right, Leslie.
Oh, gosh. I have a lot, so I'm gonna try to be fast. I'm Leslie Fitzpatrick. I'm in private practice, Williamson County. Used to be on the board for the Texas Association of Specialty Courts. Many of you know there was a bill passed last session to allocate funds for the Texas specialty courts from the mixed beverage tax. I'm the one that got that ball rolling back in 2018, and we're talking like 10+ million with the drinks to go. It's probably way more than that now. So if you have a specialty court or you're interested, there is money. So go look. The governor's office is the one where you do the application and all that. I'm very excited to see how much money the budget that we're going to have that specialty courts have a line item now. Mixed beverage tax money to go into. I live here in Williamson County, City of Austin. On Tuesday, the county allocated $35 million to mobile loaves and fishes, which many of you are familiar with that program, to build more housing for the homeless here in Austin. As many of you know, the homeless have addiction and mental health issues. If any of you have had a chance to go out and see what mobile loaves and fishes, they address both of those, so that's a huge thing for this area. In regards to our forensic bed issue, which was in bad shape before the pandemic, it's gotten in worse shape since then. I was in a meeting with Senator/Dr. Campbell last month. She and I spoke with one of her staff yesterday. She is in the process of trying to get a bill filed that would give LVNs the ability to work in our mental health hospitals to help deal with this shortage we're having with registered nurses. And then I was in a meeting with Lieutenant Governor Van Patrick just this past week that he's talking about providing free money for registered nurses like we do for our doctors if they'll help with the hospital situation. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Huff.
Yes, I'm Judge Huff. I preside over County Court 12 in Bear County, and I also preside at the Mental Health Court. So this year, I just found out yesterday that me and two other judges, Judge Rosie Stephen Gonzalez of the Domestic Violence Court, and Judge Ernie Glenn, who presides over the Felony Drug Court, we got invited. Our proposal was accepted by the National Association of Drug Professionals. So we will be presenting in June at that conference, because I mean, that's a huge conference, like 8,000 to 10,000 people go. That's the largest special court conference. And they told me that over 400 people do submit proposals. So I was really honored that I got selected. I submitted a proposal last year, I didn't get selected, but I was happy I got selected this year. And what we do present, are we going to be presenting on is how do you go about educating the community about specialty courts? We actually did present this at TASC last year in Corpus Christi, reception. So Carson Fox asked me to submit again and tag him in, and I did, and my proposal was was accepted. And it's a big deal, how does the judiciary go about educating the community about what we're doing, especially, of course, even the JCMH, how do we go about educating the community? Because all these good resources are here, but how do we get it to the people that really need this information? And that's what our presentation is about.
Okay, a final request. I have had judges asking for a list of all the communities who are trying to build diversion centers. And so the list that I have, I want to read, it's really short, and if you know of others, if you will contact me after the meeting. So I know of Paris, Dallas, Bear, Tarrant, and then new ones that are coming online or trying to, Travisville, Lubbock, Williamson, and Hayes. So if you know of other communities that are working for a diversion center, they're trying to connect and learn from each other.
All right, anybody else?
Well, I wanted to recognize Dr. Sandra Smith, who is another person with us today, new to the Collaborative Council. Dr. Smith?
She must have just
She
stepped
must have just
outside.
stepped.
She was right there.
Okay, well, she is a reentry advocate and the peer programs manager at Via Hope, which provides training and consultation for people in recovery. And so we'll welcome her to the Collaborative Council. Okay, well, with that, we're delighted to give you back some of your time this afternoon. Thank you for joining, and we're adjourned.
I gotta stop.